Elias Vance did not just own solar panels. He managed a small personal power utility. His rooftop array, a sleek obsidian expanse covering the entire south-facing slope of his home, was his point of pride, his investment in a self-sufficient future. Every morning he checked the array's production metrics on his phone before coffee. Every evening he verified the net metering data from the utility company, a ritual of environmental piety and fiscal prudence. For the last 20 days, the numbers had lied. It started subtly, a marginal discrepancy in the overnight consumption. His house, sealed against the elements and equipped with the latest energy-efficient appliances, should have flatlined between midnight and 5 a.m. Just the fridge cycle and the network router. Instead, there was a persistent low-level draw, a ghostly trickle of power that amounted to far more than a faulty dimmer switch or a forgotten charger. The first week, Elias blamed a firmware glitch in the smart meter. The second week, the draw became bolder, spiking briefly around 9 p.m. and again at 7 a.m., always after dark, always when the sun's generosity was absent and the system was technically running his grid-stored reserves. This wasn't phantom load. This was consumption with intent. Elias sat at his kitchen island, the cold quartz surface matching the icy anxiety in his gut. On the screen were two perfectly parallel consumption lines, charting the last 3 weeks. The blue line, his actual usage, and the red line, the system's projected usage. The gap between them was theft. He zoomed in on the data. The usage spikes were too regular, too consistent with domestic schedules. Someone was actively drawing power, and they were drawing it from his side of the meter. There were only 2 neighbors close enough. To his left, the retired accountant couple, who lived their life by clockwork and were likely asleep by 9 p.m. To his right, separated by a thin, patchy lawn and a row of overgrown, scraggly ivy, was Brenda Sterling, Brenda, or, as the neighborhood had universally and silently christened her, Karen. Brenda Sterling was a storm of aggressively managed entitlement wrapped in athleisure wear. She was the one who called the city on Elias for the specific shade of his exterior paint, who constantly complained about his unsightly solar panels, and who once threatened legal action because his prize-winning lavender was attracting too many bees into her yard. Elias and Brenda existed in a state of perpetually escalating passive-aggressive border warfare. Elias looked out the window at Brenda's property. Her detached garage, a squat structure barely 10 feet from his boundary fence, was where she ran her side hustle, an amateur ceramics and furniture refinishing shop. It was a chaotic operation, full of power tools, kilns, and floodlights. The kind of operation that chewed through kilowatt hours like a starving dog. A cold, methodical plan began to form. Elias wasn't going to storm over there waving an electricity bill. Brenda would deny, deflect, and demand to speak to his manager. He needed evidence that was quantifiable, irrefutable, and admissible in a court of law. That night, under the cover of a dense, moonless sky, Elias donned dark clothes and carried a small toolkit. He knew his system's wiring almost by heart. The main underground conduit, encased in thick gray PVC, ran along the perimeter before diving toward his meter box. He found it 30 minutes later, behind the scraggly ivy row that formed the disputed border. A crudely cut access point in the PVC, sealed with black electrician's tape that had already begun to peel in the damp evening air. It was amateurish, brazenly visible to anyone who bothered to look closely. A heavy-gauge, 3-wire cable, the kind used for large appliances, had been spliced in. It looked like a vampire's syringe, drawing life directly from the host. He followed the cable. It didn't cross the fence. It dipped down, ran shallowly beneath the grass, and disappeared into a drilled hole near the foundation of Brenda's garage. Elias didn't touch the splice. He didn't want to spook the thief. He wanted to catch her in the act, repeatedly, and calculate the exact cost of her arrogance. He returned home and accessed the online vendor. Within an hour, he had ordered a commercial-grade, inline power logger, a device designed for industrial energy audits, capable of recording voltage, amperage, and power factor in precise 10-second intervals. He also ordered a tiny high-resolution trail camera with night vision. The next evening, he went back. He carefully stripped the black tape from the splice and, with meticulous precision, wired the logger directly into the stolen line. The logger, roughly the size of a cigarette pack, was wrapped in rubberized sheathing and tucked snugly inside the PVC conduit. He resealed the cut with a stronger industrial-grade sealant. The trail camera was fixed high in his maple tree, its lens aimed down at the area. He left the tap connected. He let Brenda keep stealing. He let her use his power to run her kiln and her sanders. For the next 4 days, Elias watched the data flood in. The logs were damning. The average daily theft was staggering, easily confirming that she was running major equipment. She wasn't just charging her phone. She was running a small, illegal factory on his dime. On the 5th day, the data was complete. Elias downloaded the entire file, cross-referenced it with his net metering prices, and added 2 crucial components: infrastructure wear and tear, a calculated estimate for the physical stress on his inverters and wiring due to the unauthorized, non-standard load, punitive damages, a figure that dwarfed the cost of the actual electricity, derived from an obscure but valid local ordinance regarding unauthorized utility access, plus a substantial hourly rate for his time spent monitoring and investigating the theft. He had a number. It was 6 figures. It was glorious. He put on a clean polo shirt and walked across the yard in the middle of the afternoon. Brenda was out front, watering a struggling potted fern. "Brenda," Elias said, his voice level and almost unnervingly calm. He held a thick manila envelope, its contents stapled and meticulously ordered. She looked up, annoyed. "Elias, what is it? Your solar panels making too much noise again?" "No, my solar panels are doing exactly what they're supposed to do, generating electricity. I'm here because you are doing something you're not supposed to do, stealing that electricity." Brenda's watering can paused mid-air. Her face went through a rapid series of expressions, confusion, then pure aggressive indignation. "How dare you? Are you accusing me?" "I am. Specifically, I am accusing you of unauthorized access to my private electrical infrastructure for the purpose of deriving financial benefit by operating commercial machinery, starting approximately 3 weeks ago. You are insane. Elias, you think I would crawl under the ivy for your ridiculous little green power?" She sneered the word green. "You didn't have to crawl far," Elias replied, tilting his head slightly toward the ivy. "The splice job was a little sloppy, Brenda. The 10-gauge wire running into your garage? That's for your kiln, isn't it? Very power-hungry, those things. You must have thought you were so clever, bypassing your own meter entirely. Free energy. What a fantastic profit margin." Brenda threw the watering can down. It hit the pavement with a loud clang. "I don't know what you think you've seen, but you are not stepping 1 foot on my property, you paranoid little—" "Oh, I won't," Elias interrupted, his eyes hard and cold. "I have everything I need, Brenda. High-resolution video proof of the connection and a commercial-grade power logger that has been meticulously recording every kilowatt you've stolen for the last 5 days. I know exactly how much you owe." He held up the manila envelope. "This isn't just an electricity bill, Brenda. This is a legal demand letter, itemized for every stolen watt, every hour of forensic labor, and maximum punitive damages allowed by law. I didn't send a warning. I sent a final invoice." He dropped the heavy envelope onto her porch mat. "The sound flat and final. You have 7 calendar days to pay the full amount," Elias said, his voice dropping to a low, chilling register. "Or the court will take your garage, your kiln, and whatever else it needs to satisfy the debt. Good luck." Brenda stared down at the envelope, her face pale, the sneer gone, replaced by a dawning visceral panic as the scale of his calculated retaliation hit her. The total amount, visible through the envelope's window, seemed to shimmer like a mirage. She had expected an argument over $50. She had not expected to be staring down the barrel of a 6-figure catastrophe. The manila envelope lay on the distressed oak surface of Brenda's kitchen table, a venomous snake coiled in her otherwise pristine home. She hadn't dared open it fully, only squinting at the black, bold figures visible through the address window, 187,450 Darter. The number was a surreal joke, A figure meant for a failed hedge fund manager, not an artisan ceramicist whose biggest sin was a few stolen kilowatts to fire a glaze batch. Brenda's initial panic had curdled into white-hot, furious denial. Elias Vance, that smug, eco-obsessed little tyrant, was trying to bankrupt her over a couple of extension cords. This wasn't justice. This was attempted murder by bureaucracy. She snatched up the phone and dialed her lawyer, Marty Gelman, a man whose specialty was aggressively managing homeowner association disputes and extracting small-time developers from petty local zoning snafus. He was expensive, but he was loud. "Marty, it's Brenda Sterling. Listen to me, I have a major problem. That lunatic neighbor, Elias, the solar panel guy, he's just served me with a 6-figure lawsuit for stealing electricity." "The nerve!" she hissed into the receiver, pacing her plush living room rug. Marty's voice, a gravelly monotone of practiced indifference, came back. "6 figures? Brenda, darling, calm down. What exactly did you steal? Enough to power downtown for a year?" "It was nothing. A small, temporary tap to run the kiln in the garage a couple of times when my meter was acting up. He's claiming punitive damages and forensic labor. He's invented this number to harass me. This is defamation. I want you to sue him for emotional distress. I want him to take those panels down. They're an eyesore!" There was a brief silence on the line. "Brenda, I need you to send me the full demand letter, the itemization, and any evidence he included. Unauthorized utility access, even if small, is a criminal charge first, civil second. 6 figures means he's not calculating the cost of power. He's calculating the cost of getting caught. Send it over. Don't talk to him. Don't touch the line. Don't do anything but wait for my call." An hour later, Brenda emailed the scanned document, a sloppy PDF of Elias's professionally bound report. She hadn't noticed the included flash drive. Marty Gelman, a man who had seen every conceivable flavor of neighborhood pettiness, sat back in his leather chair. He was expecting hyperbole and a $500 demand. Instead, the first page was a dense 20-point legal summation citing municipal codes and electrical infrastructure statutes. He sighed and reached for his reading glasses. He opened the itemized billing, and his eyebrows shot up. The actual cost of stolen electricity was indeed paltry, about $450, but the rest? Unauthorized infrastructure. Modification, code 33.1.c. Penalty multiplier, X30 forensic. Monitoring and data acquisition, hourly rate $350 HR. 40 hours estimated inverter degradation. Due to non-standard load fluctuation, certified electrical engineer estimate, $45,000, the total was real. Elias hadn't just calculated the bill. He had calculated the most devastating, legally defensible, and complex penalty possible. He had weaponized the entire solar power system against her. Marty then plugged in the flash drive. The first file was a time-stamped high-definition video loop. It showed Brenda, clear as day, dressed in yoga pants and a wide-brimmed sun hat, crouched behind the ivy, checking the taped connection, smoothing the earth, and then retreating. The next set of files were spreadsheets, raw data from the power logger, showing the exact voltage draw, the amperage, and the power factor every 10 seconds for 5 full days, complete with the telltale signature of a high-draw kiln cycling on and off. Marty leaned back, rubbing his temples. This wasn't a petty squabble. This was a surgical strike by someone who had done his homework, someone who had waited patiently and planned meticulously. He called Brenda back. "Brenda, listen very carefully. You need to stop talking about suing for distress. This is significantly worse than you described." "Worse? Marty, it's a tiny bit of power." "No, it's a textbook case of utility theft involving unauthorized infrastructure modification. And worse, your neighbor hasn't hired a standard residential attorney. He's compiled an expert engineering report and a forensic data audit. He has video time-stamped irrefutable evidence. He let you continue stealing for 5 days just to build a statistically significant data set. He set a legal trap and you walked into it." Brenda felt the blood drain from her face. "But the price, it's outrageous. No judge will sign off on that." "They might. The punitive damages are based on an ordinance protecting private power generation infrastructure. They are designed to be a deterrent. And the claim for inverter degradation? That's an engineering question, not a legal one, and he has a certified estimate. Your only defense is to claim he entrapment, which is weak, or that the equipment was faulty, which his data negates. Marty paused, the sound of his heavy breath filling the speaker. You need to prepare yourself, Brenda. Elias Vance is not looking for reconciliation. He is looking to win. And right now he is holding all the cards. The shock was replaced by a cold, searing resentment. Elias had gone too far. He had declared war. She wasn't going to roll over. I need to know what he cares about, Marty, Brenda said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, mirroring Elias's cold resolve from the day before. He cares about those panels. He cares about his reputation. He cares about his clean image in the neighborhood. We need to attack the source. Brenda, I strongly advise against any non-legal retaliation. That will only strengthen his case. No, we will answer his legal demand with an emotional one, she decided, ignoring him. His precious panels are an affront to the neighborhood's aesthetics. The association has rules. If I'm going down, he's going down with me. I want you to draft a cease and desist regarding the noise pollution and visual blight of the solar array, citing every single HOI regulation you can find. And Marty, I want it delivered today. Marty sighed, recognizing the inevitable pivot from defense to scorched earth offense. Fine, Brenda, but this is going to cost you regardless of the outcome. You are throwing gasoline on a meticulously planned fire. Brenda hung up, her hands trembling. She walked back toward the garage, not to start the kiln, but to stare at the small, nearly invisible hole in the foundation. She realized the cable, though easily cut, was her umbilical cord to free operation. Elias had taken that too. She couldn't afford to run the kiln now. She couldn't risk more data being logged. She pulled out her phone and logged into the neighborhood social forum. Maple Creek Community Voice. Her fingers flew across the screen, composing a scathing, thinly veiled post about eco-hypocrites and aggressive surveillance that was designed to rally the perpetually bored neighbors to her cause. I just received an outrageous legal threat from a neighbor trying to use his monstrous, noisy rooftop installation to extort money from me. Watch out, people. You might be next. Some people hide cameras and data loggers just to ruin lives over a few pennies. We need to enforce the aesthetics clause immediately. She hit post. The first comment, from the retired accountant next door, popped up immediately. Is this about Elias's panels? They are a bit shiny, dear, but they don't make any noise. The second comment, from a woman across the street. Brenda, I heard you were selling a lot of pottery recently. Where do you get the power to run that kiln? Just curious. Brenda realized with a sickening jolt that Elias had not only planned the legal attack, he had already successfully preempted her attempts at a social counterattack simply by being the neighborhood's quiet, beloved eco-pioneer. She was truly alone. She looked at the six-figure envelope again. She wouldn't pay. She would fight. And to fight, she needed leverage. She needed to find Elias's secret, his weakness, anything that would make that number disappear. She grabbed her keys and headed out, not to the lawyer's office, but to the hardware store for a shovel. She needed to know exactly what Elias had put in the ground, and she needed to do it before Marty's legal attack landed. If she was caught digging, she could claim she was simply repairing her septic line. It was a risky, desperate move, but the threat of a six-figure loss had shattered her composure, replacing it with sheer animal survival instinct. She was going to find the logger and destroy it. Brenda Sterling's world was now reduced to fluorescent lights, chipped paint, and the faint metallic scent of regret. She was released on a steep five-figure bail 24 hours after her arrest, thanks to Marty Gelman's frantic maneuvering. But the mugshot and the local police blotter entry for felony criminal mischief were already permanent stains on her pristine image. Marty met her in his office, his customary indifference replaced by palpable exhaustion. He didn't offer coffee. He slid a copy of the police report across the table. You turned a $450 civil theft into a felony that carries jail time, Brenda. Elias Vance didn't just win the battle. He executed a full legal and technological obliteration of your defense. We have video of you digging, audio of the alarm, and the severed cable as a physical exhibit. My job now is damage control and plea negotiation, not victory. Plea negotiation? I want him ruined, Marty! He entrapped me! He provoked me with that fraudulent bill. Brenda spat out, still wearing the shame of the previous night's grime beneath her perfectly applied makeup. The bill wasn't fraudulent, Marty corrected, rubbing his eyes. It was aggressive, yes. But the law allows for punitive damages, and you provided the physical proof he needed to elevate the charge to a felony. He outsmarted you, Brenda. Now we focus on minimizing the fine and avoiding jail. The civil suit for the $187,000 is still pending. And frankly, after the vandalism, his claim is stronger than ever. Meanwhile, Elias Vance should have been celebrating. But his calculated victory felt hollow, sterile. The police had left. The area was taped off as a crime scene, and the main conduit lay exposed and severed. Fixing it would require a certified emergency call-out, costing him thousands and disrupting his solar production for days. A bitter irony. The true cost began to emerge when he stepped outside the next afternoon. Mrs. Albright, the usually effusive retiree who adored his lavender, walked past his lawn and stiffened, refusing to make eye contact. Mr. Henderson, the accountant, stopped mowing his lawn and simply stared at Elias with an expression of thinly veiled contempt. Elias had been the quiet, forward-thinking neighbor. Now, he was the vigilante, the surveillance expert, the man who set an alarm trap to have his neighbor arrested in the dead of night. His clinical ruthlessness, while legally justified, had shattered the delicate social contract of the neighborhood. The backlash climaxed at the Emergency Homeowners Improvement Association Hoya meeting called that evening, ostensibly to discuss the unprecedented criminal activity at the Vance-Sterling border. The community room was packed. Brenda, looking dramatically frail and leaning heavily on Marty, was the victim in this court of public opinion. Elias walked in alone, clutching his original data logs and the police report. The Hoya president, a perpetually flustered man named Dennis, started the meeting by trying to enforce decorum, but the room was a hive of buzzing anger. Elias, we've seen the police report, Dennis stammered. But the neighborhood is concerned. An arrest? Felony charges? Over a property dispute? A woman from the back shouted, "He had a camera hidden in the tree! Is he filming all of us? This is not the safe community we bought into." Elias stepped forward, his voice projected with calm authority, trying to use logic against raw emotion. "I installed a recording device to document a felony theft that was costing me significant money and damaging my infrastructure. The theft was proven, and the subsequent act of vandalism, which severely compromised my home's power security, was also recorded. My actions were a necessary lawful defense of my property against a sustained, intentional attack." Marty Gelman, seeing his opening, smoothly interjected. "And yet, Mr. Vance, the court must ask, was the $187,000 demand based on hypothetical inverter degradation and an exorbitant hourly rate for forensic labor, an act of defense, or an act of extortion and provocation? My client, under extreme emotional duress caused by this unjust six-figure threat, simply panicked and attempted to remove what she believed to be an illegal surveillance device. He baited her, then trapped her, causing her to commit a desperate act." The room murmured agreement. Elias's meticulous preparation was now being used against him as evidence of cruelty. His logic was failing against the human element. They saw a quiet man who had amassed overwhelming power to crush his weaker neighbor, not a victim defending his clean energy investment. "And what about the noise?" Brenda chimed in, her voice tremulous. "Marty has already sent notice regarding the sustained, low-frequency hum from his inverters, which violates the Hoya's noise ordinance. He claims to be green, but he is a menace to the peace and quiet of Maple Creek." This was the opening Elias had feared. The HOA was less concerned with theft and more concerned with the precedent set by his extreme response. The quiet, calculated revenge had cost him his standing. "My inverters are certified and run below acceptable decibel levels," Elias began, but Dennis interrupted, emboldened by the room's mood. "Elias, we are going to need an independent sound audit performed by the Hoya's engineer on your property. Until then, the board is issuing a formal notice of non-compliance regarding the visual impact and perceived noise pollution of the solar array." Elias felt a cold dread. If the Hoya found any technical infraction, they could force him to modify, cover, or even remove the panels, the source of his pride, his investment, and the entire root of this conflict. He had focused so intensely on destroying Brenda that he hadn't considered the blast radius. He looked across the room at Brenda, who now held a faint, triumphant smirk, her eyes glinting with a dangerous promise. She had lost the legal battle and faced criminal charges, but she had successfully turned the court of public opinion against him. She had nothing left to lose, and that made her infinitely more dangerous. Elias walked out of the meeting without another word. The night was dark and a chill had set into the air. He rounded the corner of his house to check the crime scene tape around the severed conduit. Suddenly, his phone, which had been silent, screamed with an urgent notification. It wasn't a data log or a police update. It was an alarm from his solar monitoring system. Error. String 3 of inverter offline. Critical power loss. String 3 was the most inaccessible section of his rooftop array, the panels directly over the rear, unseen corner of his house. It was not connected to the vandalism at the front of the property. He looked up at his pristine black roof, unable to see clearly in the darkness, and the realization hit him. Brenda was arrested. But her crew, or perhaps a highly motivated sympathizer, was still active. His calculated victory had only served as a diversion for a far more devastating and difficult-to-detect attack on his true center of power. Someone had sabotaged the panels themselves.